What's going on, everybody? Welcome to another episode. Today I am working on my personal 2015 Mini Cooper Countryman S John Cooper Works edition. The starter failed on me. I went through all the relays. I pop started the car just by pushing it down the street, and it pop started. So I know that nothing else major was wrong with the car because the car ran fine. I drove it around, and I drove it around. My garage is empty right now, because this car usually lives right here, and then my wife's car over there. And then my Grand National usually sits on this lift with the Skyline underneath it. So I was able to drive the car around and put it up on the lift myself, shut the car down, and today we're going to be replacing the starter. So the starter I ordered from Rock Auto. It's right here. It's going to be fun to work on because I saw another video of somebody doing one on the ground. Just lifted the car up with some jacks, or a jack and a jack stands, and it looked pretty difficult because this is all-wheel drive. You have the two CV axles, the rear drive shaft, and of course the exhaust in the way to get to the starter. So the first thing I want to do is get this car up in the air and remove the skid plate. Actually, before I remove the skid plate, I want to remove the negative terminal off the battery. So it's just this guy in here. I'm going to grab that with a 10mm bolt or a wrench, take the negative right off, and lift the car up. All right, so I got the battery disconnected. I lifted the car up, and I noticed it was impossible to get to that starter from the bottom. The transfer case is in the way. I'm not sure if you can tell, but if you see here, the starter, let me see, is right there. See it right there. So the transfer case is right below it. And then you have the frame, the exhaust, there's just the firewalls here. There's no way to get to it. So I was like, okay, let's try from the top. So fortunately, I have an easy remove intake, an M7 intake. See, I removed it. It's over here. So I removed the mass airflow sensor, the piping, and the air filter and housing, and I'm able to see the starter now. So now I'm trying to compare it, since I can't see it very well. I'm going to see if I can get to the bolts on it. So I felt the top one, which on the new starter here, I felt this guy and this one. So if I can get to these two are threaded. So I'm not sure, because I don't feel anything going through the entire transmission if there's a massive bolt that goes through the entire transmission into this. I haven't felt that. So let me try to crack those two off. I don't see too well at the starter from up here, but I'm gonna do my best to try to crack those two bolts off. So let's see if you could see this in here or not. But access to the starter from the bottom, I was saying earlier, is impossible. Not only do you have this drive shaft, the transfer case right here, the exhaust downpipe, the frame itself, all the suspension components. So I don't know if you can even see it, but let's see, there's the starter. It's removed, and there's just no possible way to get it out from the bottom unless you start removing a lot of stuff. So up top, the air intake manifold is in the way, but I'm gonna try to see if I can move some hoses or maybe disconnect some hoses and try to pull it up because it ain't coming out the bottom. All right, so I've removed the old starter. I pulled it up through the top. I'll show you that here in a second. But here's the old starter. You can see she's pretty beat up. I removed this little sleeve right here, this little retainer sleeve out of here. Just grabbed it with a pair of vice grips, pulled it out, put it in the same hole. And we know that the starter only takes 2 bolts. It's just these two right here. 1 and 2. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna clean up the area. I unplugged the 13mm bolt battery wire from here. There's actually 2 wires that are on a harness that connect into this. And then there's another attachment clip here. There's like a U clip that goes on this little harness. I actually dropped that down. I'm gonna see if I can find that real quick. Let's see if we can find that, and I'll show you how I pulled out the starter. It was not easy. A lot of finagling because I didn't want to rip up any hoses, but I basically pulled it up. I pulled it up through here. So all these hoses just kind of move out of the way as I'm pulling up on it. Be careful as you pull up on it. If you can move some out of the way, like you can see here, I kind of pinned one behind the fuel pump, the high pressure fuel pump right there. And then the coolant hoses, I just unclipped those and just pushed those back towards the firewall. All right, let me see if I can find that clip and we can get this thing in here. Okay, so the new one went in a lot easier. It's down here right now. I'm not lined up yet, but you can see that it was easy to get down in here. I installed the clip-in harness. I was able to find the retainer clip. So now I'm trying to mount up the starter, kind of just mocking it up so I can see how the harness goes on. I forgot how the bolt-on harness slides on, so it's not hitting anything. So I'm going to be mocking the starter up real quick and then see if I can get that harness on. So I got a little bit ahead of myself, but I was able to get the new starter in. Let's see if I can get zoomed in on it. You can see the corner of it right there. But just the two bolts, the top and the bottom one, I put the anti-seize on the threads, bolted it on. I put the two harnesses on right where the air filter housing is. When that was removed, it was easy to mount the two harnesses to the starter, and then line up the starter was really simple. I used the top bolt as my guide, got the little pin sleeve in place, and hand tightened that one, and then I started working the bottom one. And now I'm just putting everything back together. As you can see, just putting up the air intake and tightening up all the hoses, make sure all my harnesses are plugged back in. All my hose retainer clips were put back on. And let's see if this thing will start. Let's not forget the negative. Put the negative back on the battery so that we can test this thing out. So I removed, I don't know if I mentioned earlier, but I removed the negative side because the positive side will keep the memory of the car, whatever memory it has on the computer. It should keep everything on there. So I removed the negative. Now I'm going to put the negative back on, and let's see if she'll turn over and start. All right. Come on, baby. Oh. So if it's not the starter, then what is it? Because that is a brand new starter. Brand new starter.
Connections, relays?
I checked all the relays. I checked all the fuses. All right, so I replaced my starter. Replaced the starter on the car, but that was not the issue. Unless they sent me a dud starter, but I couldn't find a video online of anybody replacing an all-wheel drive R60 starter. So hopefully this video at least helps somebody out on you can replace the starter through the top. Just got to remove your factory air intake, not air intake, but the air inlet box. Your air box, I have an aftermarket M7 one, but if you have the factory one on, you just got to take it completely out and basically lean over the top of the engine and get to those bolts. They're 10mm 6 points. Good luck. I'm going to keep working on this car, but this was for the starter replacement. Thank you.